When the Fourth Hokage did not die in the Nine Tails Rebellion, when the Uchiha of Kiba did not exterminate the clan, when Daitu knew the spot behind it. When Naruto's parents are both intact, when Sasuke lost his father from a young age. When the entire Kiba family stands behind the fourth generation, when Tuanzang is forced into a mental illness, and when the third generation has to acknowledge their own incompetence. The wood leaves of inner sage and outer king, the wood leaves that have never self-consumed, unify the entire ninja realm. Yuzhibo said, "At first, I just wanted to live, but if possible, I want to live better." Keywords of the novel: Hokage, intelligence quotient from Uchiha no pop-up window, Hokage, intelligence quotient from Uchiha TXT complete collection download, Hokage, intelligence quotient from Uchiha latest chapter reading. Chapter 1, Feng Shui Gate. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Feng Shui Gate. Wood leaf, Yao Lamian noodles. Thank you, Uncle Shouda, for taking care of me today. Goodbye. At the entrance of the noodle shop, he crossed his waist and smiled, saying, "Don't be so polite. It's thanks to you for being so busy today. We need to continue working hard tomorrow." Tomorrow? The purpose of coming here from the Uchiha tribe to work is because of tomorrow. The safest place in the whole wood leaf is Yao Lamian Noodles Hall. The appearance of this small Lamian Noodles restaurant has never changed, whether it was the Nine-Tail Rebellion or Pen's six-way destruction. In my memory, if it weren't for that lunatic who helped, my younger sister Quan would probably have been more or less unlucky. From this, it can be seen that even the land of the Uchiha tribe is not safe on the night of the Nine Tails Rebellion. Moreover, my body, which is over 5 years old, and my reaction time in my previous life, are almost indistinguishable from suicide. Don't let me down, today. After exhaling, Yuzhibo Yun quickly walked towards the land of the Yuzhibo tribe. The second son of Yuzhibo Fuyue, the clan leader of Yuzhibo, has been born. This event has confirmed the timeline for Yun, which is October 10th this year, the Nine Tails Rebellion. And tomorrow, it will be October 10th, the day when the protagonist was originally born in this world, so tonight after midnight, it will also be the day when I cheat my account. I'm back. Yun pushed open the door, and there was a girl sitting in the living room with a cute tear mole at the corner of her eye. Brother came back very late. It seems that Uncle Hand Fighter's business must be very good today. Yuzhibo Yun walked forward and rubbed the little girl's hair, saying, there were particularly many guests today. Did Quan go to practice again today? Yuzhibo Chuan nodded and asked, I don't understand why my brother wants to work in Yao Lamian noodles for a long time. I haven't practiced sports with him for a long time. Yun smiled but didn't answer. At this moment, his mother Yuzhibo Yiyu walked out of the kitchen carrying tea. In fact, Yun doesn't need to work so hard. There is still some savings at home, enough to hold on until you become ninja and start taking on tasks. Yun nodded slightly and said, I have already saved quite a bit in the past 6 months. I have told Uncle Shouda that he doesn't need to go the day after tomorrow. Upon hearing this, Yun's mother breathed a sigh of relief and let a 5-year-old child go out to work and earn money. She truly felt sorry for her late husband. Yuzhibo took a sip from his teacup and stood up, saying, I've been busy all day and I'm a bit tired. I'll go wash up and rest first. He rubbed Quan's little head again and said, Brother can practice with you the day after tomorrow. You can't be lazy then. Quan Gulu retorted, I practice diligently every day. Brother is just a little older than me. Don't let me surpass you then. Yun smiled and waved his hand as he went to the bathroom. As a twin, he was only slightly older than Quan. As night fell and the second hand on the alarm clock passed by early in the morning, Uchiha Yun sat up eagerly. Through time, Yuzhibo, who was at the same time as Itachi, knows how he has been living over the past 5 years. Before the appearance of cheats, he would wake up every day when he fell asleep, and he even thought more than once about finding a chance to slip away alone. Until 5 years of family interaction, when my mother often revealed her love in her words, Quan used to call out to her brother with a sticky voice when she was a child. Family, this thing that was not in my previous life, has become a bond for Yun in this world. It will be 8 years before the psychopath will kill the whole family regardless of age. In his previous life, Yun liked this anime character, but when he was really in the scene. Why? My family of 3 returned to Uchiha just to survive after my father passed away. My family, who is not even qualified to participate in the clan association, is neither hawkish nor pigeon-oriented. My mother goes out every day to work hard, just to support a pair of children. Why must a family of 3 with an orphan and widowed mother die because of your Itachi's nonsense village and family philosophy? Why? As a person who has received modern education, Yun likes the stable life of my today, but the premise is that this stable life is not at the cost of the lives of his family of 3. Yuzhibo clenched his fist, and the next actions tonight will inevitably affect the future. If they can be changed, then everything is good, if not. 8 years from now, it won't take 8 years. Within 8 years, Uchiha Itachi himself will inevitably kill him first, before the death of the water stops and stimulates his kaleidoscope to bloom. The plot of Hokage world opens. Intelligence exchange successfully launched. Rule replication function successfully started. Yuzhibo was slightly focused and ordered in his mind, open the exchange, use beginners to reward trading partners, S-level ninjas, 4th generation Hokage wave wind and water gate. Locked S-level ninja, 4th generation Hokage wave wind and water gate. Exchange space-time flow rate has been changed. Do you want to enable shadow mode? Without hesitation, Yuzhibo opened it. In a daze, the surrounding space blurred and became clear again. The wooden bed under me turned into a chair, and there was a long table in front of me. Across from the long table sat the 4th generation Hokage of Kiba Shadow Village, the wave wind water gate. In just an instant, Yun noticed that the wave wind water gate on the opposite side frowned in confusion. Yun looked down at himself. It was really a black shadow pattern, simple and clear. It was exactly the same as the little black man who committed crimes every time in Conan Lee's life. If he hadn't been paralyzed into liquid, he might have been the same as Heisei, who was determined to save his mother. Don't waste your effort, your flying thunder god won't have any effect here. Moreover, in this space, illusions, ninjutsu, and even chakras won't have any effect. Just as Yun's words fell, the body of the wave wind water gate across from him suddenly shook, but was once again pushed back by an invisible force, unable to move. With a sigh in his voice after changing his tone, Yun casually waved his hand and said, "How can we explain it? Here, whether you are Huoying or the 6 immortals, you cannot attack me." In the sense of rules, no form is allowed. Feeling the pressure on his body, Feng Shui thought for a moment and stopped. Being able to pull oneself into this space in an instant from the living room of the home, and even the flying thunder god has no effect, all ninja illusion forms are ineffective. Under this unsolvable means, one can only observe its changes in silence. "Who are you? What do you want to do?" asked Feng Shui. Yuzhibo shook his head slightly and said, "Who am I? As for what I want to do, you can think about it in your mind. The rules of this space should already be in your mind." Feng Shui frowned slightly, and the message that appeared out of nowhere in his mind made him pause for a while. "So you're not the creator of this space, and this is just an exchange, neither side can attack the other, and, you can't lie." Yun nodded and said, "Yes, information that you don't want to say can be left unsaid, or you can clearly answer that you don't want to say, but you can't lie. Once you lie, the space will give a prompt and the transaction contract will not be established. And talents, bloodlines, ninjutsu, and so on can all be used as chips for intelligence trading," said Feng Shui. Yun propped up his temple with one hand and said, "The chips of trading will not disappear after trading, but will be replicated by space to me. As the first party, It's not that I can only get what you give me. The magnitude of the change in fate is directly proportional to the chips you give. For example, if you survive the dead and change the fate of more people, then the biggest chip I can get from you is the talent of ninjutsu in time and space. After pondering for a moment, Feng Shuimen said, I don't have anything I want to trade. I have a talent for ninjutsu in time and space, and I don't want to replicate it to an unidentified person. Just as the Feng Shui gate was about to stand up, Yun immediately said, Jiu Shinai's death date is today, it's already past midnight, so this piece of information can be considered a bait. As the words fell, both Feng Shui stared fiercely at the patterns on the long table. True. The font with the patterns appearing tightly clenched his hands into fists, and the eerie space, suppressed by the power of rules, made him dare not gamble whether this would be true. The cloud across from him said at this moment, the chips only need your consent, not what you give, let alone what you personally teach. If everything is false, then your time and space ninjutsu talent will naturally not be obtained by me. And if everything is true, is a time and space ninjutsu talent that will not be lost comparable to Kushina's life? Or, is there also Naruto's life? New book, thank you for your support. End of this chapter. Chapter 2, 2 Chips. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 2 Chips. Naruto. Originating from Teacher Zillai's only serious novel, it is the name of the protagonist and also the name of the unborn child in Juxina's belly. And tomorrow, is the expected time for Juxina's pregnancy to end and give birth. I can't gamble, I can't afford to gamble either. In an instant, Bo Feng Shui Gate stared intently at the cloud and said, I want to know everything about Jiu Shinai's death. The black figure of Yuzhibo's incarnation smiled and gestured, contract. As the contract fell, Bo Feng Shui picked it up and shook his head, saying, why is there a time limit and there are 5 types of trading chips? Yuzhibo extended a finger and shook it, saying, the concept of everything is too general. The rules of the exchange believe that the cost of knowing about Juxina's death is too great for you to afford. That is to say, all your current ninja illusion body techniques and all your innate bloodlines are not enough to pay the price of this intelligence. So, space provides everything for a day, and the cost is 5 chips. Everything. It's too general. Who killed Juxina? 9-tailed. Who released the 9 tails? With soil. And how did he survive with soil? Did Uchiha save him? How did Uchiha live to this day? Because he used delayed ignachi. He also bit a piece of meat between the 1,000-handed pillars, gathering the power of all things and opening the eye of reincarnation. Where is Uchiha now? Dead. How did you die? All such vague concepts will involve one person, bringing out all the secrets of the ninja world, and the chips of the Wave Feng Shui Gate are obviously not enough. At this moment, the Feng Shui Gate remains silent for a moment, and how to ask questions has become a question he urgently needs to think about. Who killed Juxina? No. If the human pillar power is stripped off, the tailed beast will die, and the answer to this question will only come out with 9 tails. Why did Juxina die? No, just answer that the tail beast is detached. Who caused the death of Kushina? No, knowing who it is doesn't matter much, what's important is the process, it's the enemy's intelligence. So, what are the abilities of the enemies who caused Juxina's death? The words of Bo Feng Shuimen fell, and the contract emerged. This time, only 2 chips were needed. After exhaling a breath, the cloud on the other side calmly looked at the 4th generation Hokage on the other side. Should one truly be someone who can become a Hokage? Only in this way did we get 2 different traps, and we didn't ask the enemy's identity and name, we only needed the details of their abilities. The term ability is also very general, but it belongs solely to one person's ability intelligence, so the system offers the cost of replicating it twice. By inferring with ability, one can know the process and make targeted plans. However, with the confidence of the Feng Shui gate in oneself, after obtaining intelligence, there is a high probability of catching the attacking enemy. At that time, the identity of the newcomer can be known without any cost. Agree to the contract. The words of Feng Shui men fell, and the contract turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the space. After thinking for a moment, Yuzhibo began to provide intelligence. The person who caused Kushina's death had a kaleidoscope Sharingan, although it was only a single one, due to the presence of cells between the thousand-handed pillars, in its body, the ability to perform pupil surgery could be used frequently. The illusion of kaleidoscope writing will-I is very strong, and the extent to which it is strong is another question. Similarly, due to the interpillar cells, it can cast some wood dung, but it is obviously not as strong as that of thousand-handed pillar. Due to the teleportation contract, his kaleidoscope Sharingan can control the 9 tails. Secondly, the ability to void his pupils can cause any part of his body or the entire body to enter a different space, during which time, attacks from the real space cannot hit him. Of course, illusions launched against his spirit are effective. But using illusions on a Uchiha who has opened the kaleidoscope Sharingan and has interpillar cells would not be a good idea. Pay attention to one piece of intelligence. The interval between each blur is 5 minutes, and each time the opponent attacks, it will become a physical entity. I think with the neural reflex speed of the 4th generation Hokage, this opportunity can be seized. Isshin Naki. Isshin Name. After the words ended, the inner turmoil of Bo Feng Shui Gate could not be calmed for a long time. With so many abilities, whether it's kaleidoscope or Mu Dun, they can all be said to be legendary powers, it's simply shocking. After half a moment, Bo Feng Shui's gaze narrowed slightly and he said, control the 9 tails, the kaleidoscope Sharingan, and the power of the first Hokage. Each one in this intelligence seems to remind me of the identity of the enemy who is attacking. But, how could it be? The cloud on the other side shook his head slightly and said, this intelligence, will you give me another chip? Bo Feng Shui glanced at the table and looked at the cloud, saying, isn't it a spot? You can't lie, but you haven't given a clear answer. Yun is a bit speechless. Apart from the second idiot from the 7th generation, there is really no one who can become Huoying. Even though the Bo Feng Shui gate in front of him comes from a commoner background and has a smile like the sun, it is still not easy after the Ninja World War. In fact, you are well aware that if Jiu-Shinai dies, your time of death will also be the same. Do you want to know the identity of this enemy now? One chip is enough, I can tell you. Bo Feng Shui man was not tempted, but shook his head slightly and said, with so much ability intelligence, the enemy's name is not important, even if he is Uchiha. As for what you said about my death date, although this space shows truth, it should be based on the premise that I did not come here and did not receive this intelligence. Upon hearing this, Yuzhibo across from him scratched his head. The 2 chips were still too few. As the 4th generation Hokage of Kiba, there are too many things he wants on the body of Bo Feng Shui men. The talent and neural reflex speed of ninjutsu in time and space are derived from Kushina, Kushina is derived from the sealing technique of Vortex Mido, and finally, it is the Kushina technique that includes the second stage of the Kushina. After a moment of contemplation, Yun continued, I don't think Kiba has the ability to keep this person, and due to the spiritual contract, the probability of Kiba being able to save her life with intelligence is not 100% for the 9-tailed pillar and 9 Shinai. And the 4th generation of Hokage. If Kushina dies, you will also follow closely, which is a decision you will make yourself. And your death, the subsequent chain reaction, will cause Kiba to decline for more than 10 years. If you have experienced the Great Ninja War, you should be well aware of how the wealthy and besieged Mai in the 5 great ninja villages will react to the hungry wolves around them once they decline. 3 generations, like a decaying tree that has already aged, he cannot support the richness of its leaves. You can understand this as bait. The last sentence made Bo Feng Shui's heart tighten. Since the 4th generation of Hokage, Kiba has also seen the scene of two shadows together for the first time. Adding two advisors, one hidden in the root group, and one's own youthful and excessive age is a kind of balance in itself. Can you take action to protect Juxina? Yuzhibo shook his head slightly and said, this is an intelligence exchange, and I won't personally take action. But there is a power in Kiba that you don't know can stop that person. And your request for that power will also have a positive impact on Kiba's future. This intelligence, because it involves a problem you are concerned about and a hidden power in Kiba, so, 2 chips. End of this chapter. Chapter 3, Exposure with Soil. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Exposure with Soil. Another contract appears, 2 chips. Feng pondered over the other party's words, a piece of intelligence he cared about, and a hidden power in Mai. The prompt is already clear. If this power can be borrowed by oneself, then it is obvious that the source of this power will be someone familiar to oneself or someone who has a kind heart towards Kiba. And that intelligence. Controlling the 9 tails but not Uchiha, so. Although some can be guessed. Feng Shui men looked at the well-organized black figure on the opposite side, whose intentions were also very obvious, and he still dared not gamble. This is not a battlefield, we can rely on attacks to test the accuracy of intelligence. It's about the future of Kiba, the life and death of Kushina, and Naruto. Agree to the contract. Amidst helplessness, a firm voice sounded as the contract was established. Yuzhibo smiled and raised a finger, the first person you can ask for help from. Chimu Kakashi. What? How could it be? Feng Shuimen was stunned for the first time. You should know that even the most shocking intelligence before, he had never shifted his focus away from the clouds. And at this moment, it is because he is too familiar with the person mentioned from Yun's mouth, from the flag would flow knife technique to the lightning cutting ability that can cut off thunder, all of these abilities are clear to him. Compared to the enemy intelligence he had just received, he couldn't figure out how Kakashi could help him. The cloud on the other side waved his hand slightly and said, I'm surprised, right? In fact, it's just Kakashi himself. At this moment, he probably doesn't even know his own abilities, the power of that kaleidoscope writing will I. Kaleidoscope writing will I. In an instant, Feng Shuimen thought a lot and his face also showed a loss of composure for the first time. Another kaleidoscope Sharingan, and previously, based on the mysterious shadow in front of us, it was possible to determine with a high probability that the enemy was not Uchiha. But the contract of the 9 tails of spiritual communication. Yuzhibo, the one-eyed Yuzhibo, the one who defected from the wooden leaf Yuzhibo, or perhaps went missing, no. The body is not on the consolation tablet. With soil. Yun continued, Kakashi's Sharingan has actually evolved to the level of a kaleidoscope a long time ago, but because he is not Yuzhibo, he has not yet sensed this power. And now I can tell you that this power is very restrained against that person. By the way, with the wisdom of the 4th generation Hokage, I should have guessed his identity by now. So the second person hidden in the power of Kiba. Uchiha Fuyue, or Uchiha Shizuki. Looking at the shocked 4th generation Hokage, Yun said, the ability of Kakashi's eyes requires the guidance of Uchiha. As a 4th generation Hokage, you have formed a good relationship with Uchiha, and if you remember this help in the future, perhaps the kaleidoscope loyal to Kiba can reach 3 pairs and a half. And this, as mentioned earlier, is about the future. Without waiting for the waves in the Feng Shui gate's heart to ease, Yun continued, the 3 generations who were once known as the ninja Xiong are already old. Looking at the children playing happily in the village, in fact, his heart resists all factors that can undermine peace. But in this era, concession means weakness. Concession to former classmates, concession to former disciples, concession to enemy countries. Yun stared at the wave-wind water gate across from him and said, you are the 4th generation Hokage known as the Golden Flash, and only you can change everything. If you live, there will be too many tragedies that will not happen again. Every step you take in the future will have a profound impact on the world. There is even a high probability that peace will continue once again. As the words fell, the Feng Shui gate sitting across from him relaxed and smiled helplessly as he looked at the dark figure across from him. Although I don't know who you are, it's truly a shame to be able to make peace and continue this evaluation of me. And from these words, you can see, you must also be someone who longs for peace. That 4 chips, it was because of these speculations that I agreed to the contract. So, do you still have bait? It's quite fragrant. Smiley face. The cloud on the other side shook his head slightly and smiled, saying, I've told you enough already, and you don't have any chips you can afford anymore. Feng Shui nodded with a smile and said, I have benefited a lot today. Thank you. As the words fell, I stood up and disappeared. In the Uchiha clan area, Uchiha Yun in the room raised his head and looked at the clock. Click. Sure enough, no matter how long one stays in the intelligence exchange, the outside world is just a moment. The negotiation table seems to make the atmosphere very dull. Next time, it's also good to turn it into Huoying rock, which can have a certain impact on the customer's psychology, and the special effects in the air are also more convincing, isn't it? In the home of the 4th generation Hokage Wei Feng Shui Gate. Shui Men, standing by the bed, was pondering the intelligence she had just received, while Juxinai, lying in bed, was staring at her. During pregnancy, estrogen was constantly being secreted, and anger was constantly growing. Water, door. Boom. With one punch, the 4th generation Hokage of Kiba. KO. Who am I? Where am I? What was I going to do just now? Shui Men, who had climbed up from the damaged furniture, looked bewildered after 3 questions and scratched his head for no reason. Jiu Shinai on the bed tearfully said, Tomorrow we're going to have a baby. I asked you to pick up a glass of water. You ran to the living room and stood for a while, but then ran back without even moving your hand. Is there such a perfunctory thing? Shui Men was stunned for a moment, then remembered that he was indeed preparing to fetch water for Juxinai before being pulled into that exchange. Ah. Sorry. Suck. I forgive you. Shui Men went to the living room again to fetch some water, but kept thinking about the intelligence he had obtained. There is only 1 day left. The 9-tailed spiritual contract. A foolproof statement. We must take action now. I need to go out for a trip. Jiu Shinai, who was lying in bed, just took a sip of water and asked for a moment, is there an emergency situation so late? The husband, who was a Huoying, was about to go out. Thinking of tomorrow's due date, Jiu Shinai couldn't help but feel nervous. Don't worry, trust me. I'm ready to be foolproof. You take a break first, and I'll come back and tell you later, said Shui Men with a smile as he held Juxina's hand. Jiu Shinai nodded obediently, never dragging her feet on anything serious. Even with the title of Golden Flash and many achievements before becoming Hokage, the success of Watergate cannot be achieved without the sealing technique of Kushina. Feng Shui put on a fire shadow cloak and a fire shadow hat, and a golden flash appeared at Kakashi's house. That was a gift given to Kakashi by Watergate when he became a ninja, a flying thunder god with his unique technique engraved on it. The first 3 chapters have changed 2 words. In fact, as Hokage, if it weren't for bait, I wouldn't believe a stranger. Clarify the interests and cast the bait to get what you want. And the first transaction was related to the 9 Tails Rebellion, and also to the probability of the protagonist's life and death, so. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, Yuzhibo Waterstop. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Yuzhibo Waterstop. Schwa. The slight movement made Kakashi suddenly stand up, and the bitterness in his hand was already horizontal in his chest defense. After seeing the person coming clearly, he hesitated and said, Old teacher. Why did you come so late? The cloak and hat, dressed so formally, immediately put Kakashi into a state of mind. Is something wrong? Lord Hokage. Feng Shui nodded slightly and said, I just received intelligence that tomorrow there will be an enemy plan to release 9 tails, and one of the enemy's abilities is the kaleidoscope Sharingan. Kakashi was a bit confused, even reaching out to touch her forehead, below which were her dusty eyes. Looking at the scene in front of Shui Men, he hesitated and sighed before saying, time is a bit tight. We need to go to the Yuzhibo tribe's land. On the way, I will tell you the enemy's intelligence and where you need help. Inferring the future changes of Wave Feng Shui Gate. Change in established death facts. The protagonist, Naruto, changes his fate in the whirlpool. The protagonist Uchiha Sasuke's fate changes. The fate of the second layer of the doll's Uzi wave with soil has been changed. Wave Wind Water Gate fate change degree, 100%. Extracting secret scrolls. Note, secret scrolls CD refreshes every night in the early morning. Note, secret scrolls are rule evolution. Secret scrolls, avatar, entity, can be perfectly resurrected within the avatar after death, only one can exist. Wind attribute chakra, confuse blood inheritance. Time and space ninjutsu talent. S-level neural reflex velocity. Whirlpool sealing technique. Flying thunder god technique, wave wind water gate. Spiral ball series, including follow-up ideas for wave feng shui gate. Instant body technique, wave wind water gate. Secret scroll. The information in his mind made Yuzhibo Yun ponder. Is the reason why a cheat is called a cheat because it doesn't have a manual? In a series of messages, it seems that the secret scroll extraction occurred because the degree of change in the fate of the wave wind water gate reached 100%. So these extra chips, which do not belong to the Pofengshui gate itself, are truly good things. After death, perfectly resurrect within the clone, that's one more life. It seems necessary to abandon one thing from the original plan. If I had known earlier that I should have pitted the little son again, for example, how many years later would the crown princess have a difficult time? Shaking his head, Yun withdrew the divergent thinking that was common among the travelers and looked back at the 8 chips in front of him. The 4th generation Hokage wave wind and water gate can only be considered as chips recognized by the intelligence exchange, and there are only 7 types. Among them, the wind attribute chakra is qualified to enter because it can integrate blood inheritance. Now choose 4 out of 8, except for the 4 things that have already been prepared, and fill in the secret exam. So, the first and most important and crucial chip, neural reflex speed. From birth to the beginning of this world, in the past 6 years, Yun has understood one thing, the gap. The decades of comfortable life in his previous life have never matched Yun's reaction speed at this age. It should be noted that even the crane-tail Naruto before going to school can easily and quickly cross a single wooden bridge. Physical fitness benefits from soul piercing, so with a little training, one can keep up, but reaction speed has always been Yun's weakness. And who has the strongest reaction speed in the world of Hokage? There is no doubt, the 4th generation Hokage wave Feng Shui gate. In an instant, the Flying Thunder God followed the Spiral Maru closely, and there was still time to imprint the Flying Thunder God spell on Daitu's body. It can be said that although the Flying Thunder God was first created by the 2nd generation, it is the wave wind and water gate that truly unleashes its full power. The technique of Flying Thunder God is equivalent to teleportation as long as it has coordinates, but without corresponding neural reflex speed, it is equivalent to hitting the enemy's sword with the head. The second one is the talent for ninjutsu in time and space. The third one is the technique of Flying Thunder God. The fourth one is the clone of the secret scroll. 4 chips have been selected and the originally planned sealing technique has been removed. The 4 symbols seal, the 8 trigram seal composed of the double 4 symbols seal, the contract seal, the lock-tail method seal. There are too many, but the most important Vajra seal requires the talent of the Vortex clan. So in the end, Yun removed the original selection line from the sealing technique. And the time-space ninjutsu talent is the same as the Flying Thunder God itself, although the Flying Thunder God is not only available on Watergate, it is definitely also available on the 3 current Hokage Guardians who are quite similar. But just like before Watergate, Yun also dared not gamble. Originally, if the first transaction of tonight was not successful, then Yun planned to fight with his hand in the Jiuwei Rebellion to escape this disaster by his fate as a supporting role. And now the first transaction with Bofeng Shuimen went very smoothly, so everything cannot be left to luck. Outside the territory of the Yuzhibo tribe, Shuimen stopped with Kakashi. Kakashi, you said, do we need to bring a fruit basket or something? Kakashi on the side was still in shock at the moment, as the teacher had given a bit too much information along the way just now. Is my left eye, the one left with dirt, the wheel eye of a kaleidoscope? Legend has it that Uchiha used these eyes to control the 9 tails. Is this power related to the anomaly at that time? Pop! Kakashi snapped out of his senses after being photographed and looked at Watergate with a blank expression on his face. Teacher, where are we going to buy fruit baskets at this time? And the teacher also said, didn't he? Time is running out. Shuimen scratched his head and said with a smile, Fuyue's youngest son was born, and that little guy with the same name as the father of the 3rd generation of adults is here. That's why I want to buy a fruit basket. Kakashi rubbed his face mask and said, Teacher, do you think a little guy who's not even a year old is not sleeping at this point? Schwa! A figure wearing a ninja vest appeared and bowed slightly, saying, Lord Hokage, what happened to your late-night visit? Shuimen looked apologetic and said, I'm really sorry to bother you so late, but there is indeed an urgent matter and I hope to get the help of Captain Fuyue. Has he slept yet? Yuzhibo shook his head and said, the captain is still in the security forces because he has been busy lately. Let's go, I'll take you inside, otherwise. Subsequently, the 3 of them began to walk towards the Kiba security forces, but just then, Yuzhibo's restrained desire stopped, and Shuimen heard a lot of things. But how could Uchiha, who hesitates to speak to himself as a Hokage, be in the security forces? Captain, Lord Hokage is visiting. After the door was opened, Fuyue inside was slightly surprised and still bowed, saying, Lord Huoying. Shuimen smiled for a moment and said, I came so late because I need the help of brother Fuyue, so, could you please call Yuzhibo Jishue first? Fuyue was taken aback at the words and looked at Uchiha Shonen, who was about to leave. Huoying calls for Waterstop, but doesn't recognize it. Although he was awarded the title of Instant Stop Water in World War III, it was only after returning to the security forces that the 4th generation of Bofeng Shui men took office. But, what is it that requires both oneself and Jishue? Itachi started Xuanguyu at the age of 8 after more than 2 years. After his teammate's death, he and Jishue participated in an exercise mission, which was set after leaving the security forces. Similarly, the death of Jishue caused the rebellion to be postponed for 2 years, and at the age of 13, the extermination of the clan was reversed. Jishue died at the age of 11 in Itachi. During the exercise mission, it was 2 years after Itachi was 8 years old, and at this time, the kaleidoscope of Jishue had already opened. New book seeking big shots to invest in. End of this chapter. Chapter 5, Concealing of Waterstop. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Concealing of Waterstop. Stop water, let me introduce myself to Lord Huoying. Fuyue's words made Shuimen look at Yuzhibo behind him, and he smiled slightly depressed. Later, Jishue bowed and said, Lord Huoying, I am Yuzhibo Jishue. I am currently serving as the squad leader in the security forces. Shuimen scratched his head awkwardly and said, I only heard of your name for instant water stopping on the battlefield before. Later, you joined the security forces, so. Wait a moment, both of you. Breathing out, Shuimen took out a scroll and formed a seal with both hands. Barrier, blockade. Release the hand of the seal and look at Fuyue, who was slightly nervous. Shuimen smiled and said, a barrier that blocks the perception around us, because we don't know if the enemy has a helper, and that kind of ethereal ability can shuttle through the village barrier, so. After a moment of relaxation, Shuimen's expression became serious and he looked at Fuyue, asking, so first of all, I want to know if either of you has opened the eyes of the legendary Uchiha clan, the Kaleidoscope Sharingan. As the words fell, there was a moment of silence in the barrier. After a long time, Fuyue sighed and stepped forward, saying, among the entire Uchiha clan, only the former Uchiha Ban and his brother Uchiha Kwana have opened the Sharingan of the Kaleidoscope. Lord Hokage asked me and Jishue, it's really impressive. Shuimen frowned and pondered for a long time before speaking. In fact, after taking over the position of Hokage from the third-generation adults, I gradually understood the conflict between Uchiha and the village. I understand Captain Fuyue's concerns very well, but the enemy I just mentioned is not the Uchiha clan of Mai. This time, it's Kiba's chance, and it's also Uchiha's last chance. So, please sincerely tell me if anyone between you has opened the Kaleidoscope Sharingan. Fuyue is speechless. After a long time, a voice rang out. Lord Huoying, can I trust you? Shuimen suddenly looked over and saw that in the slightly raised pupils of Yuzhibo Jishue, the three hooked jade tails gradually connected together, eventually forming a pattern similar to a dart. This scene shocked not only Watergate, but also Fuyue and Kakashi on the side, who were stunned. At such a young age, he opened his eyes to creativity. As a Hokage queen familiar with Uchiha's eye-opening needs, Shuimen was even more shocked by the pain experienced by this young man. Getting love and then losing love. During this process, most people will immerse themselves in pain and darkness, while others, such as the recorded Yuzhibo mirror, will become even more eager for love. The young man in front of him, Yuzhibo Jishue, if what the dark figure said is true, then he is one of the very few members of the Yuzhibo clan. Shuimen exhaled and said, you can trust me, and I can guarantee that I will do my best to maintain the relationship between Uchiha and the village, and even truly integrate into Kiba in the end. Fuyue on the side hesitated to speak, and Shuimen looked at him and said, trust is built on the basis of both sides. So, tonight, Juxina's child, also my child, will be born. And Juxina has 9 tails sealed inside her body. As soon as this sentence was spoken, Fuyue and Jishue were stunned. She told Fuyue's wife Mei-chin about the news of Juxina's birth, and they were already friends, but the specific time was confidential. In history, Joe has had the experience of being manipulated by Uchiha, and such trust is enough to show Fuyue and Jishue the sincerity of Shuimen. Compared to when Jishue died 6 years later, at this moment, Yuzhibo has not yet reached the point where he had to reverse himself, and even Jishue's kaleidoscope has not mentioned it to anyone. It was not until 6 years later, when Itachi was 11 years old, that Jishue revealed the truly bug-worthy ability of other gods. Finally, due to the fault of the Wood-Leaf Pot King, he could only delay the rebellion for 2 years with his own death. Fuyue bowed slightly and said, everything is up to Lord Hokage. The Waterstop on the side clenched his hands tightly, indicating his mood at this moment. With the support of the 4 generations of Hokage wave Feng Shui Gate, perhaps between families and villages, then, the abilities of other gods. After a moment, Jishue respectfully said, Lord Huoying, what can I do? Shuimen glanced back at Kakashi and said, I have received intelligence that Kakashi's Sharingan, derived from the soil, has also opened a kaleidoscope, but he still cannot control this force. I need you to stop the water and help Kakashi unleash the power of his left eye. It's not that I don't believe you, but intelligence shows that the power of Kakashi's Sharingan is just enough to counter the enemy's ability. Phantom. Part or all of one's own entity can be transferred to another space at any time to be immune to damage. Under this ability, the vast majority of ninjutsu techniques are ineffective. So, Shui understood the unfinished words of Shuimen and immediately replied, I believe in the fourth generation of adults, and my kaleidoscope Sharingan happens to be an illusion ability that can release illusions called other heavenly gods without looking at each other. Other gods? Shuimen's face showed confusion. And Shui, who had already said this, naturally replied, other gods, can plant a seed in the enemy's consciousness, allowing the opponent to naturally take action with this seed as the target. In this situation, few people can detect that they have been enchanted. However, the weakness of this spell is the need to continuously output chakras, so. Later on, Shui didn't continue speaking, but he keenly sensed. Lord Huoying seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Sure enough. No matter where this ability appears, high-level politicians will be wary of it. I can't say for now that I have already used up the power of the other gods in my left eye when I woke up. As soon as the morning light rose from the horizon, Yuzhibo was awakened by the sound of the kitchen. For the past 5 years, my mother has been getting up so early every day. After finishing breakfast, she would go out to do things. She has never had a day off in a hurry. So she remains optimistic, and what she does is the growth of Yun and Quan every day. Can I take a leave this afternoon? Yuzhibo and Yi Yu looked back with some confusion and said, is there anything wrong with Yun? Yun shook his head and said, I just want to eat the tempura made by my mother. Can you come back early and make it for me to eat? Yuzhibo Yi Yu in the kitchen laughed and reached out to rub Yun's hair, but then withdrew it. She remembered that her son was precocious and didn't like others rubbing his hair. If Yun wants to eat, of course he can. I will take a leave with the shopkeeper and go to the market early to buy ingredients. So Yun also needs to come back early today. I will go to the market with Quan. Yuzhibo nodded and said, I will come back after noon and talk to Uncle Shouda. After breakfast, Yun went to Yao Lami and Noodles to resign. There are still many things to do in the morning, and I need to go to the Nara family's ancestral land and Chinsi shelter. If there is enough time, I also need to go to the mountain behind Inyen. The specific situation of the secret volume clone was not easy to experiment with last night. It is necessary to try and determine how to operate it to maximize benefits. Note, in the Infinite Moon reading, the fourth generation Hokage Wave Feng Shui Gate has made 2 preparations. If they cannot reach an agreement with Uchiha, it will also be a genocide. Note, the right eye was dug away by Tuanzang, and there is a clear statement in the TV version that the output of chakra is disconnected. However, the left eye can be covered with dirt and reincarnated on crows, with a huge difference. Combining with the kaleidoscope, there are usually 2 abilities. One CD is long and the other CD is short, one can plant permanent latent consciousness at once, and the other must continuously output chakra. Note, Shui was gouged at the age of 11 when Itachi proposed to control Fuyue with the other gods. Perhaps the ability of the other gods had not been mentioned to the higher-ups before, but Uchiha had already reached the point of approaching rebellion, so he only revealed his ability. Otherwise, Tuanzang wouldn't have been digging his eyes at that time. It was obvious that he was afraid of the ability of other gods. Please invest, everyone. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 6, The Changed Knight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6, The Changed Knight. Pop. Secret Volume Clone. With a clap of his hands, Yun saw a cloud of smoke appear at the bottom of the river beside him, but the faint figure in it never appeared. But Yun raised his lips, and indeed, the secret scroll of rule evolution has many uses, not just a hint of an extra life. Of course, having an extra life is the most important function. Starting today, as long as the clone and oneself do not die on the same day, they can be resurrected when they refresh again in the early hours of midnight. And now. In a cloud of smoke at the bottom of the river, a young man who was 1.8 meters tall gradually emerged, and under his red hair, a slightly deviated 3-dimensional Mihiko appeared at the bottom of the river. Red-haired Mihiko, Whirlpool Mihiko. No, the name of the clone, empty. As if two souls have the ability to serve two purposes at once, the clone will flash past the bottom of the river and head towards the distance in the next moment. And the cloud floated up to the shore, with its current unknown identity, no one would put in a lot of effort to monitor it. Releasing a clone at the bottom of the river was just better than nothing. The ubiquitous Baiju and the 3 generations who sneak peeks around when they have nothing to do, I hope there is no coincidence. The Nara family's territory and the Chinsi sanctuary have both imprinted the Flying Thunder divine technique in hidden corners. If the 9 tails are still released tonight, although the probability is small, it is necessary to be proactive. It was already noon when I returned home from the back mountain, and my mother and Spring had already returned. The family went to the market happily. As night falls, the wooden leaves under the lights remain noisy. The clone's empty gaze on Yin was slightly fixed, and the distant figure passed by in a daze. The barrier set up earlier seemed to have little effect on this person. Due to concerns about the 9 tails rampage, the place where 9 Shinai produces is located in a cave outside of Mai, with a barrier set up outside to prevent any accidents from happening. But even so, the aura of the 9-tailed chakra still penetrated the barrier slightly and permeated the air. Is it possible to extract 9-tailed chakras for sealing in advance and then slowly release them using sealing techniques? Has the actual production site of Juxinai strengthened the sealing? No trace of the 9-tailed chakras have been leaked. It's really impressive. The clone ran an empty errand and sat down, only to wait. If there was a lot of movement, he would go and do something. If there was not much movement, he would have to leave some techniques to go back to sleep. Ah! How painful! Watergate! Watergate! The cave echoed with the painful cries of Juxina, and Shui men stood next to her, holding Juxina in one hand and looking worried. Kakashi, who was hiding in the dark on the side, had a bewildered expression on his face. Why were the 2 men so serious when playing the role of husband and wife, so consistent? 2 movie stars. 10 minutes later, the change lying in bed made Jio Shinai's throat a bit hoarse, but the other person seemed unable to come out. Time is running out, and if a baby is born in the real place of birth, the 9 tails' breath at that time cannot be blocked, no matter what. At that time, the enemy will surely be able to guess that this is a trap. Wait. In an instant, Jishui thought that it was precisely because the seal of Juxinai would weaken during the baby's delivery, and Joei chakra would suddenly erupt, so the other party must be waiting for this opportunity. So. Thinking of this, both the Waterstop and the worried Watergate looked at each other, both smart people, and in an instant, they understood each other's meaning. And at this moment, the Daitu who came in with his virtualization ability is also a bit impatient. The 9-tailed chakra has been leaking for half a day, why hasn't this little brat come out yet? The sealing technique of the Vortex clan is renowned in the ninja realm, and the unique bloodline of the Vortex clan is also the best sealing constitution for tailed beasts. And with the birth of a baby, there is another constraint on the Golden Flash, a baby without any resistance. Born. Born. Fuyue's transformation into Pipa Lake and 2 female medical ninjas exclaimed in surprise, but there was no abnormal baby crying inside the cave. Shueimen immediately exclaimed, why is there no sound? What's wrong with Naruto? Fuyue immediately understood and said, you need to hit twice, rest assured. As he spoke, he lifted the child upside down and flicked his fingers at the soles of the baby's feet, saying, don't worry, this way if you have amniotic fluid in your mouth, you can spit it out. Shuimen's face showed gratitude, and the Waterstop on the bed knew that his task was almost completed. If he continued to shout, his throat would be ruined. Here we go. In an instant, a figure appeared silently beside Fuyue, and Kowu thrust directly towards his neck. Shwa! A teleportation technique was used to dodge, and Fuyue nervously looked at the enemy in front of him, while the baby in his hand was snatched away for avoidance. I didn't expect my wife, who is the 3rd generation Hokage, to have such a quick moment, but now. The masked man, carrying a baby package with a single hand, painlessly stabbed directly at him. In an instant, he looked at the former teacher in front of him, and the kaleidoscope wheel's eyes were full of ferocity. Experience the pain of losing love, teacher. This time, you are still late. Bang! A burst of smoke rose up, and the baby inside the package turned into a bitter nothingness. On the pitch-black blade, a shadow with a mask of dirt appeared, as if mocking. Traps. How could it be? In an instant, the mask looked at the feng shui gate with dirt on it and said, "How did you know?" Shui Men looked solemnly at his former disciple, although he didn't look at him due to his fear of the Sharingan, he still showed regret when he looked at the bandaged arm. "Although there are many things I want to ask you, I'm sure you won't answer honestly now. Some things are my responsibility, so, let's catch you and ask." The Flying Thunder God instantly activated the technique that had already been arranged in the cave, making the water gate seem ubiquitous at this moment. "Shwa! What makes you feel like, able to catch me?" said Kowu, penetrating the void of the brain with a tired and sarcastic expression. Shuiman's arm had just passed through, and in an instant, Daitu turned around and stabbed Kowu mercilessly. Shwa! The Flying Thunder God flashed again, and Watergate appeared on the side, confirming the intelligence from the black shadow in his heart. At this moment, Tu tilted his head and looked at Jishui, who was still lying in bed. "Since the baby is fake, then I believe the nine-tailed pillar force is also fake, right? Still pretending to be dead there, do you think I'm foolish enough to move you?" The Waterstop on the bed awkwardly stood up, scratched his head, and said, "I didn't treat you like a fool. It was just that the performance was too awkward, I just recovered." The mask sneered with a earthy sneer, "It was really realistic just now. If you could be arranged here by the fourth generation, then your strength should be good, right? The third generation Hokage? Sorry, senior of Yuzhibo, you guessed wrong." Bang! The words of stopping water had just fallen, and in the smoke after lifting the transformation surgery, a pair of riding wheel eyes resembling a cross appeared. "Don't be a god. Without any precautions, the seeds of other gods have already been planted." End of this chapter. Chapter 7, Green Suso. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Green Suso. Divine Power. Old, yes, no. In the vortex of ninjutsu in time and space, a figure with dirt is being pulled into another space, while intermittent sounds are being heard. In this moment, only Shui Men knew what he was saying. The boy who used to be always late because of his willingness to help seemed to have returned once again. But all of this is built under the illusion of another heavenly god named Jishui. Did the seed suddenly wake up and apologize because it was named Surrender? Lord Hokage. My chakra is being cut off. The sound of stopping the water suddenly sounded, followed by a change in the face of the water gate. Kakashi, hurry. At the moment when the vortex contracted, Kakashi suddenly jumped out, divine power. Another vortex in time and space enveloped the Waterstop and Kakashi, disappearing into the cave together. And Shuemen and Fuyue exchanged a glance, and the two released their senses one after another, constantly paying attention to the changes in every space around them. In a different space, a strand of blood flowed down from Jishui's left eye, and Kakashi beside him even collapsed to the ground. Chakra's connection has been interrupted. You can take the soldier grain pill to restore chakra first, and then I will deal with him. Jishui said and looked at the masked man across from him, but he had a certain guess about his identity in his heart. The enemy's abilities were analyzed very clearly by the fourth generation, and were suppressed by Kakashi's left eye kaleidoscope ability, which is also a fact. But from beginning to end, the fourth generation never told them the identity of the enemy. The ability is already so clear, but the identity is unknown, and it is so similar to the ability of Kakashi's kaleidoscope. Perhaps Kakashi doesn't understand, but as a Uchiha, Jishui understands very well. Sharingan, the eye that reflects the soul. The kaleidoscope is an evolution of the Sharingan that crosses the divide, with various abilities, but the foundation is the ability to evolve based on the thoughts of the heart. Chimu is not Yuzhibo. Without Yuzhibo's bloodline, it is impossible for Chimu to evolve from Sangoyu to a kaleidoscope. Based on this, when Kakashi's kaleidoscope Sharingan truly evolved, it was another eye that evolved. Such similar temporal and spatial abilities, one attack and one defense. The points of each clue are interconnected, and the identity of the man with the vortex mask in front of him is about to be revealed. Yuzhibo brings soil. The disciple of the fourth generation Hokage waved Feng Shui Gate, the close friend of Kakashi, and the hero of the third battle. Hooking. At this moment, Daitu was panting heavily, and he, who had interstitial cells, was not physically or chakra overdrawn, but afraid. Instantly standing still, this Yuzhibo, who is about the same age as himself, surprisingly has such an inexplicable power. A single kaleidoscope with soil was slightly heavy, but only focused on the lower body of the Waterstop. Yuzhibo. The illusion of the kaleidoscope Sharingan can unconsciously and naturally control people from the bottom of their hearts. Even if it's a kaleidoscope, this ability is limited. The differences in the other space cut off your chakra, causing this almost unsolvable illusion to be broken, said Daitu with a slight upward gaze. Is it at that time when you achieved remarkable military achievements through the illusion technique of instant body stopping water, in the 3 battles? So you should also have experienced the pain, right? This world is full of sin and war, my younger generation. Do you also want to betray me? As soon as the words fell, the mask with dirt appeared next to Kakashi in an instant, and he reached out to dig towards his left eye. But the next moment. Boom! The green chakra wrapped around the skeleton and blocked in front of Kakashi, while the cross in the blood-red pupils spun wildly. The skeleton suddenly jumped up, and a green chakra-wrapped arm padded towards the mask with dirt. Bang! In the Shinwei space, floating boulders exploded. The dusty gaze that flashed past in an instant was solemn. Suso, you've reached this point. Blood flowed out of his watery eyes once again, and the exhaustion of his kaleidoscope pupils made him unable to bear it anymore. The green skeleton dissipates, the cross symbol returns to the 3-hook jade state, and the standard ninja sword is slowly pulled out. In fact, if it is not too urgent, Soanenghu Shui does not intend to release it. Analyzing the known intelligence of the enemy, the ability of the opponent's kaleidoscope wheel eye has now been invalidated. Lord Huoying and Captain Fuyue are guarding reality, while themselves and Kakashi are guarding a different space. Both sides will attack at any time. In the real world, Lord Hokage's Flying Thunder divine technique is spread all over the place, and with the speed of golden flashes, if he dares to teleport it, he will be beaten. What I need to do is to use the actual cave area as the boundary to achieve victory. Bang! A iron chain was taken out with soil and said, "You can't protect him, Uchiha's descendant. Next, I'll show you the power I gain from the pillars." Mu done. The tree realm has descended. In an instant, countless trees grew wildly in the rocks of the other space, while all the branches quickly rolled towards the stop water. Fire escape, the art of the giant fireball. Taking advantage of the flames eroding the trees, Jishue lifted Kakashi and hid. After a few brief moments, he finally stopped at a stone block. Shwa! The iron chain and darts suddenly attacked, and a series of branches swept across the back once again. How long can you hide? The power between the pillars, but you can play all day. Jishue kept avoiding, and Kakashi on his back finally opened his right eye. Without Uchiha's bloodline, it's really difficult to close from the kaleidoscope to Sangoyu. "Let go of me, it's up to you next," he said. Without turning back, Jishue continued to dodge and said, "Is that okay? I'll have to rely on you to get out later." Kakashi looked up and gestured. It's not a problem to hide and defend on one side, after all, he's also afraid that I'll teleport him out in an instant. It's difficult to close, but a shot can be quick. After a moment, Jishui put Kakashi down, pointed to his own eyes, and then turned around to attack the soil. Endless trees and flames filled the entire space, the stopping water maximized the instant movement, but there was no opportunity to perform illusions when approaching. The other celestial gods in the right eye have been interrupted, and the other celestial gods in the left eye that do not need to be connected by chakras can be used when they open their eyes. The only thing that can determine the winner is the instant body with the help of illusion. Bang! The ninja knife collided with the iron chain, sparks overflowed, and the trees kept rolling and rolling again from behind. However, at this moment, Kakashi in the distance suddenly pulled up his forehead. Divine power. In an instant, the mask with soil ignored the water stop that had just been pushed back and quickly dodged. With his understanding of his own teacher, he is well aware of the consequences of being teleported. After the abolition of Shinwei, if there is still a chance of winning against Jishui and Kakashi in the other space. In the real space full of flying thunder magic, in just an instant, he will be killed by his own teacher. Chang! The blood-red cross appeared again, and the illusion triggered by the kaleidoscope Sharingan was staring at the soil that had just been dodged. The art of instant body. Just click on the investment button. End of this chapter. Chapter 8, Captured with Soil. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8, Captured with Soil. The Waterstop standing with a horizontal knife suddenly started running, like a clone technique, with more than 10 water stops surrounding the soil. With soil on both hands, seal, Jie. More than 10 water stoppers spoke together and said, "It's useless. My instant technique is not just a simple illusion. With the help of the kaleidoscope's pupil power, a simple solution is useless." With a grimace on his face, a long sword came from behind, but in the next moment, he was grabbed by his wrist. Divine power. The spatial vortex reappeared, and the figure of Jishui was sucked into the vortex, but the face with soil became worse and worse. Not a physical entity. No, the feeling of grabbing the wrist is clearly physical. Bang! The long knife was caught on the iron chain. Pop! The rushing foot was blocked by the arm. The attacks coming from all sides have physical strength in each attack, but the attacks coming from the tree realm pass through the chest every time. How similar is this to one's own virtualization? If the entity is not identified, failure is only a matter of time. I have to say that even with so much intelligence, you still have enough capital to be proud, said Jishui with a slightly fixed gaze as he retreated from all sides and remained surrounded. Once upon a time, the crane tail of Yuzhibo, the innocent young man who even believed that protecting his eyes with eye drops and masks could open his eyes earlier. The growth of power is truly terrifying. Do you think you're determined to win? If it's not Kakashi. If it's not Kakashi, this bastard. Divine power. The spatial vortex kept emerging, and all 6 water stops attacking the body were pulled into real space, while a strand of blood also fell from the pupils inside the mask. Even the interstitial cells cannot keep up with the depletion in a short period of time. Just a desperate struggle. The words of stopping water fell, and a strand of flames from the ninja knife in hand climbed up, causing the physical clone to reappear. Shwa! For a moment, the flame blade attacked towards the mask with soil, and in an instant, each attack appeared in the most suitable place. God, mighty! Amidst the hysterical roar of the mask, swirls of space constantly emerge, defending against attacks while also probing the true body of the Waterstop. It's useless. Every clone has a physical entity but no physical entity, and every attack is real. With the blessing of the kaleidoscope pupil power, this illusion is unsolvable to you. Bang! Hooking. The blade with flames dissipated, and the vortex in time and space no longer appeared. The trees surging on the side also stopped at this moment, and the soil knelt on the ground, panting heavily. Standing in front of the water also consumes too much physical energy. Although it is easier than using the kaleidoscope pupil technique continuously by the enemy, the role of interpillar cells cannot be ignored. Why didn't you kill me? The voice under the mask was puzzled. Your life cannot be decided by me, and Uchiha's predicament has become increasingly difficult. Coupled with this incident, fortunately, Yuzhibo Shui was unprecedentedly fortunate, grateful that the enemy who attacked this time was ultimately blocked, and also grateful that he was the genius of his own Yuzhibo clan who blocked him. Underneath his reputation, he represents a part of Uchiha's attitude, and with the addition of Captain Fuyue from outside, it also indicates Uchiha's attitude towards the fourth generation. And upon hearing this, he smiled with a hint of dirt and said, "Ha ha ha, did you guess something? You will regret it." Shui shook his head slightly and ignored it, but said, "In order to prevent you from running away, I need to temporarily withdraw your ability." Schwa. After the instant body technique, I saw that the water-stopping hand had already been pulled out, and in an instant, I dug out my right eye under the earth mask. Ah! Amidst the gruesome cries of dirt, Kakashi, who had just recovered a bit, walked over and said, "It's already usable once. Let's go out." Shui glanced at Kakashi, unsure of how the mask of the person in front of him would fall off in a moment, and what kind of blow this descendant with white teeth would suffer. "Let's go, the fourth generation adults are still waiting for us." Pulling up his forehead, Kakashi opened a kaleidoscope, and a vortex appeared in the space, taking the three of them out of the divine power space. On the shadow rock, the clone held a telescope empty-handed and looked at a group of people coming out of the cave in the distance. At this moment, the true production site, Joei Chakra, also began to spread out, with a cold and evil atmosphere permeating the air. The water gate in the distance was slightly anxious. The detained soil on the side looked over with empty eyes and said, "Is Joei there?" He was indeed on guard, "It's just about my intelligence." "Who told you about it?" Even in the face of the fourth generation in Jishui, Daitu never feels like he will lose. Even the almost unsolvable illusion just now can be cracked by blocking chakra with space after entering the divine power space. But my original left eye, the distant divine power left eye, naturally restrained me. Card. West. Kakashi's scalp cooled as he saw a bloody black hole under his mask staring at him. "Why? What hit you is the water stop, and what's guarding you outside is the teacher. Why are you staring at me? Brother Fuyue, you can take this person to the police force first. Set up the barrier and seal, he may not be the only one." As Shueimen finished speaking and was about to leave, Jishui beside him quickly said, "Lord Huoying, this is his kaleidoscope. In the glass tube, a eyeball stands still, and the connected jade seems to have a power that can make people lose their way." Shueimen glanced at Fuyue, who was nervous beside him, and smiled, saying, "The Sharingan is the bloodline of the Uchiha clan. This kaleidoscope Sharingan naturally belongs to Uchiha." As the words fell, Fuyue breathed a clear sigh of relief. It's not that he is greedy for the power of the divine power kaleidoscope, but if at this moment, Kiba has another Sharingan that is not Uchiha's Sharingan, but rather a kaleidoscope Sharingan, that group of hawkish people. Alright, thank you all so much tonight. Also, I hope everyone can keep tonight's event confidential, please. Shueimen saw 3 people and 2 female medical ninjas nodding in agreement, so he activated the technique. The art of flying thunder god. In an instant, the wave-wind-water gate disappeared into place, while the sailor still held a glass bottle and was a bit stunned. After putting away the glass bottle, the group escorted masks and soil towards the land of the Uchiha tribe. Although Kakashi was exhausted to death on the side, he still asked, "Stop water, aren't you curious which one of Uchihas is wearing a mask? Why didn't you take off the mask?" "Huh." Shui took a breath and looked at Kakashi, who was staring at the fish in the eye. The fourth generation of adults had told me before that they could only take off their masks when he came back, so I don't know either. The escorted Daitu remained silent at this moment, like a lost dog, and he didn't want to see Kakashi. 3, 2, 1. On the shadow rock, the empty voice of the clone disappeared into place as soon as it fell. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the distant escort team. Schwa. Puff. A stream of blood splattered, and the right arm with soil and shoulder were cut off with a knife. End of this chapter. Chapter 9, The Biggest Beneficiaries. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9, The Biggest Beneficiaries. Schwa. At the moment when the figure appeared, he immediately cut off his right arm with soil, and the long sword that stopped water fell behind him. But obviously, the other party disappeared in place once again. The technique is the Flying Thunder God's technique. Kakashi exclaimed in surprise. You guessed it right. The sound of the clone's emptiness echoed behind the Waterstop, and before the sound came out, one of his hands reached towards the Waterstop's ninja bag. The target is the glass bottle containing the divine power kaleidoscope. Bang! The long sword in Jishue's hand sliced horizontally, and with one strike, he threw the clone out of the air. If it weren't for the blocking sword in his hand, the clone would have been split in half at this moment. Buzz. 3 hooked jade stones rotate, and the water-stopping kaleidoscope writing wheel eye instantly opens. Did you fail? But the primary goal was achieved. Goodbye everyone. At the moment before the kaleidoscope opened, the clone Kong grabbed his dusty arm with one hand and disappeared into the same place with the other hand. Breathing and wheezing. Stopping water and panting heavily, he closed the kaleidoscope. Tonight, whether it was chakra or pupil strength, he had consumed too much. Kakashi, standing beside him, looked shocked and said, how could the teacher's Flying Thunder God technique be possible? Fuyue, who had been playing soy sauce all night, walked forward and picked up a stone to look at a dead mouse below. His technique was, whirlpool sky, whirlpool. Kakashi frowned and said, the teacher once said that only the second-generation Hokage and the teacher learned the technique of Flying Thunder God in the history of Konoha. Who is that person? Vortex Sky. After looking around, Jishue put away his long sword and said, the strength is not very strong, and it can even be said that the strength is not as strong as a normal endurance in physical arts. If it is not too urgent, even if the knife was blocked, it can still cause injury. Fuyue frowned beside him and thought for a moment before saying, I'll report it to Lord Huoying later. It's about the Whirlpool clan and what this guy's right arm does. There are too many things related to it. The mask, which had just come over and lowered its head, gave a low, earthy smile. He, is that guy just now? With red hair, a Whirlpool clan, the Whirlpool is empty. Is it this guy who gave you my intelligence? I can't believe there are still people hiding in the darkness in this world. Do you want to know what the use of my right arm is? The reason why I am able to use the Uchiha no Water skill is because of that right arm. The Whirlpool clan, a clan that has long intermarried with Chihiro, is famous for its red hair, longevity, sealing skills, and chakrado. The other clan is the First Hokage, the power of the god of ninjas. In an instant, the words on the mask with dirt shocked several people. Fortunately, just before Daitu spoke out, Sangoyu in Fuyue's eyes slowly rotated, and the two medical ninjas did not hear all of this under the illusion. Bang! With one palm strike, Daitu, who had no eyes, was knocked unconscious by Fuyue physics. Next, all the questions will be asked by the fourth-generation adults. Our task is to escort him back to the police force and ensure his safety. Upon hearing this, Jishuei and Kakashi nodded one after another, both of whom were geniuses and had participated in 3 battles. The surname Whirlpool is not only related to the wife of the first Hokage, Whirlpool Mito, who has passed away, but also to the wife of the current Hokage 4th generation wave Feng Shui Gate, Whirlpool Kushina. In the dark forest, a figure quietly appeared on a giant tree. Hiss. The clone sucked in the cold air and looked at the wrist with no pain, it was swollen. The overall strength of the clone changes with the original body, and it is fortunate that the strength of a person over 5 years old has not been completely cut off compared to the technique of stopping water. Either it's the unexpected and almost zero neural reflex speed of the Thunder God, the second time he reaches out, it will definitely be the death of the clone. However, the harvest is still good. With the current strength, whether it is the laboratory of Orochimaru or the root of Tanzo, the clone does not have enough strength to steal things. The Flying Thunder God is useful, but it also needs to be paired with hard attack power. The power of Watergate and Spiral Pill are not what one can have now. There is nothing more suitable than this arm made from the initial column body. Bang! A smoke rose, and my arm was sealed into a small scroll. Next, I have to go outside to take on missions and play my life. My combat experience needs to grow, which is also my weakness. In fact, in the original work, the final big boo in the ending is not Kaguya but Ban, and it is impossible to say that Sasuke and Naruto will be played to death by Ban Yi. None of the ninjas who emerged from the Warring States period were not experienced in countless battles. Not like Miss Huiyi, even the technique of reversing the H*OU palace can make her stunned for 2 seconds. If it weren't for the filial son Heiju lying on the side, he would probably have to be resealed in a few seconds. Feeling empty and caressing my forehead, not only did I accumulate experience, but also the task of earning money to support my family fell here. I'm so difficult. On October 10th, the night of the Nine Tails Rebellion passed peacefully, and the noisy night market gradually calmed down. The future began to change from this day on. G. The door was opened, and Quan rubbed his eyes and asked, "Why isn't brother sleeping yet?" Yun looked up at the calm night sky and said, "It's almost dawn. Why don't you come out and look at the stars if you can't sleep? Where's the spring? Did you wet the bed again?" In an instant, Quan's face turned red and he bulged his mouth, saying, "I haven't wet the bed since 2 years ago, okay? Brother who talks about this kind of thing really hates it." Yun tilted his head and thought for a moment, when we slept together before the age of 3, we almost thought we were in the swimming pool at night. By the way, one morning last year you whispered something to your mother, and that day our sheets and covers were all washed. It must have been you who wet the bed and asked your mother to wash all the sheets and covers in the family, right? You're really a little clever, so no one will know you wet the bed, he said with a smack of his lips. Yun's words made Quan's face turn increasingly red, and he pounced in anger and opened his mouth to bite. Shwa! Unfortunately, in an instant, the cloud disappeared into place, and the spring that bit its ear almost fell, but was pulled up by the cloud behind it. So fast, brother, so amazing. Quan looked surprised. Yuzhibo reached out and rubbed her little head, saying, "This is a secret, Quan cannot tell anyone." Quan beside him nodded seriously upon hearing this and pulled up Yun's sleeve, saying, "Brother, I feel like you've changed a lot today and you love to laugh." Yun looked at the first ray of morning light in the distance and laughed. The fate of one's own family of 3 has been changed, and with the survival of 4 generations, the probability of Yuzhibo's extinction will reach its lowest point. And since yesterday, I have initially developed the ability to protect my family in this world, and I will continue to grow stronger in the future. Today, my brother will accompany you to practice the sword in your hand. Note, if a kaleidoscope with soil is excavated, several branch lines will be displayed, and I don't know how to choose for a while. Has the 4th generation Huoying been controlled at this time point? In the TV, there is a time point where Daitu takes Pain and Xiao Nan to Huoying village, and the reverse calculation shows that Banzang died and Mihiko is already dead. Has the illusion spell in Yakura been lifted as the kaleidoscope with soil is dug out? There have always been 2 versions of Blood Mist Village in the information. One is that the 3rd generation of Mist Hidden implemented the Blood Mist policy, and did not help Yakura take over after graduation to rectify the situation. Later, they were controlled by Daitu to create a more bloody blood mist village. Version 2, it's okay with the third generation of the Misty Hidden Transparent Man blood mist was created after the fourth generation of the Misty Hidden Yakura was controlled. Yakura became the fourth generation inevitably after Lin's death, because Sanwei was inside Lin's body at that time. Don't cut off graduation time again. In the manga, Kakashi's mission in the Kingdom of Bo says that 10 years ago, the graduation method of Huoying was changed by the previous year's graduation, which is 11 years ago. That is to say, Naruto did not graduate after 1 year of birth, and before that, the blood mist hidden in the mist had already existed. Do you have any understanding experts to guide you? It seems like there are still 2 monthly tickets missing until 30. Is there anyone who can give 2? End of this chapter. Chapter 10, His Light, It's Lin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 His Light, It's Lin. Late at night, the Kiba security forces. Jie. The seal under the cloth was temporarily untied, and the fourth generation Hokage Wave Wind Water Gate opened the iron fence and walked in. Behind him, the genius of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Jishui, raised his hand, and all the ninjas around Uchiha retreated. Later, just as Shurzwa turned around and was about to retreat, Shuemen spoke up, it's not bad that it was the instant Shurzwa that scared the enemy on the battlefield. You guessed it already. Let's go together. I want to be the younger generation of Uchiha who opened the kaleidoscope and wrote the wheel I. Understanding love and losing it, Daitu and you should have a common scar, right? The water stop outside the iron fence stopped and turned to stand quietly behind the water gate. Ha! Shuemen exhaled and his outstretched hand had already touched the vortex mask. Click. With a crisp sound, the mask was taken off by the water gate. But the face that came into view was far from the sunny disciple in my memory. Half of the face is composed of columnar cell structures, full of ferocity. A pair of already hemostatic but hollow eye sockets, even without eyeballs, can tell that there is no god inside. Bring, soil. A faint sound entered the ears, but the head lifted with dirt-emitted unpleasant laughter. Old. Master, you guessed it was me long ago, right? Didn't the person who gave you the intelligence mention my identity? Daitu continued speaking on his own, that's right. Both you and Kakashi are ninjas who have made remarkable achievements on the battlefield, and their intelligence analysis abilities are naturally beyond doubt. That's because Kakashi, that bastard, doesn't understand kaleidoscope, otherwise. Shuemen shook his head slightly and said, I just want to know why you became like this. Yesterday, you wanted to take action against Juxina, right? Release Jiwei, destroy maybe, kill your own teacher and Juxina who loves you by the way. The corner of his mouth raised with dirt, and he became angry with embarrassment without being exposed at all, without Lin's leaves, without Lin's world, it's meaningless to me. When Richi of Kakashi passed by and pierced through Lin's chest, this world was meaningless to me. The teacher who always came a step later, Kakashi who killed Lin, you all failed to fulfill your promises. Shuemen shook his head slightly as he was about to say something, but with a sneer of dirt, he blocked it back and said, the 3 tails were sealed inside Lin's body, right? I know, and I also know that Lin asked Kakashi to kill her herself. Is that what you're saying, right? Teacher. Shuemen is speechless. Ha ha ha. Laughing wildly with dirt, 2 strands of tears mixed with blood fell from the empty eyes. The pain of tearing the wound is not as great as the pain in his heart, just as Watergate has many questions to ask him, he also has too many questions to question Watergate and Kakashi. The only light in this world for him is Lin. Nowhere Lin. Teacher, where were you when Lin was taken away? Where were you when the boulder fell and held me down? Where were you when Lin was sealed with 3 tails? As long as you're here, as long as you're proficient in sealing techniques. Lin, you won't die. The roaring earth body was tense, and the blocked iron chains were stretched taut. But whether it is the water gate or the water stop, there is no action. As a teacher, no matter what I say now, nothing can change Lin's death. But I'm sorry. The teacher didn't protect you well. As the words fell, Shui Men, who had just closed his eyes slightly, breathed a long sigh of relief and opened his eyes. He raised his mouth and said, "So with Soil, can you come back? Come back, my. You are still with Soil, still my disciple, still Lin's teammate." Daitu was stunned. Shui Men continued with a smile, "No one will know about last night except for Kakashi Shizuki and Captain Fuyue. Those two medical ninjas will also keep their mouths shut. Come back, Daitu." For a moment, the iron fence was silent. Behind him, Ji Shui only glanced at the water gate with a slight surprise. As a member of the Fire Shadow, his magnanimity and wisdom were admirable at this moment. You should know that if you hadn't received so much intelligence in advance, it would have been inevitable that Jiuwei was released last night. And if Jiuwei leaves Renzali, Juxina, the wife of the Fourth Hokage, will undoubtedly die. Finally, even as a fourth-generation Hokage, Bufeng Shuimen may not be able to fully retreat. The disciple who almost wiped out his own sect can also forgive him, and just now he insisted on staying, so it seems that this is also up to him to see. The power of the Sharingan in the kaleidoscope last night, as well as the abilities of the other gods in Susanoo and the right eye, were clearly remembered by the fourth generation. No, and that kaleidoscope with alien spatial abilities must be weighing on the scales of the fourth generation. This is to completely believe in him and believe that this new Hokage, who has not been influenced by the second generation, will show the greatest tolerance towards Uchiha. She. He. Deep laughter echoed inside the iron railing, and the earth suddenly lifted its head. After the wound cracked, its eyes seemed like blood holes staring at the water gate. No need. I don't need any leaves, no teachers, and no one. I just need to create a world with Lin, everything else is not important. It's not important anymore. Amidst the roar, a strand of blue chakra suddenly erupted, instantly breaking through the spell that originally sealed chakra. The blue chakra rose up and broke the chains one by one, but the next moment. Bang! Seal! However, in just an instant, Watergate's hand was imprinted on his dusty belly, and the sealing force once again blocked Chakra, who had just ascended but had not yet condensed his skeleton. Can you still use Suso without the Sharingan? Although you haven't even reached the first stage, I have to say you are a true Uchiha genius. Jishui said to close his kaleidoscope, and just now he was also preparing to release Suso. The collapsed Soil was silent, and he didn't want to say anything more. After questioning, I received an apology. Is it useful? Lin cannot come back, there is no Lin in this world. Let's go. Shuimen took a final glance at his disciple, turned around and went out. The Waterstop behind him closed the iron railing and sealed it again. In the corridor, there is no stopping water and no word spoken. The water gate walking ahead said, "Wait a few more days, maybe." Upon hearing this, Jishui lowered his head. He had already understood the meaning of the 4 generations, and he still wanted to save this disciple. Shuimen continued, in the past, Daitu was often late, and the reason was that he needed to help the elderly every time. I remember during a mission, he said, there is no elderly person that Muyi doesn't know. Even though he is known as the crane tail in school, he has never given up on himself. In order to open his riding will eyes, he would drop eye drops and wear goggles to protect his eyes. He is a young man full of sunshine, and his light is Lin. At the same time, a black shadow appeared silently in the captain's office of the police force. Kushina once said, "I hope Naruto can be as sunny as Daitu." What do you think of the ultimate white-eyed wolf? End of this chapter.